demonstrates clearly Bristol is a member of the Covenant of Mayors. It's a powerful driver of local and climate transition. Has over 7,500 signatories, and by 2016 they reduced emissions by 23%. And they pledged to reduce CO2 emissions by at least 40% by 2030. So there's both action which has already taken place, as you were saying, but their ambition for the future. So I'll say a few words about some examples from Bristol, from the city I invest and represent, about how we're planning for a zero carbon future and what we're doing to get there. As some of you may know, Bristol was European Green Capital in 2015. And this award was partly based on our long-standing vision and the steps that we were taking to tackle climate change in the city and in the city region. 2019, the council pledged to reduce the city's emissions by 80% by 2050, and we used the Green Capital year as a catalyst to further that ambition. So afterwards, in 2016, we stepped up and set the aim to make Bristol carbon neutral and running on clean energy by 2050. And these tasks are being well documented and guided both by political visions as they change and evolve over time, also by the strategic climate and energy security frameworks we have at the local level. Good news is we are making progress towards our objectives. There has been real action and results on the ground. In the last decade, we've reduced CO2 emissions in the city by 31% overall. And I think similar to in your region, the council has been a lead player in that, taking the lead and reducing emissions by even more than that. A feature of our Green Capital programme and our ongoing work in the climate area is what UK's largest municipal energy investment programme. It includes a number of different actions, for example, focus on energy efficiency in housing, a district heating programme, and increasing the share of renewable energy in the city. It's important to note that this is obviously focused on the sustainability angle, but we have a strong social dimension to the work we do around energy. So quite a lot of this work is focused on reducing fuel poverty and energy poverty. So in 2015, we also created our own municipal energy company, and again has both a sustainable and a social purpose of supplying green and affordable energy to residents, and then reinvesting the profits from the company back into the city. We invested in another strand of our work during Green Capital and beyond in transport infrastructure, and introduced policies to encourage behavioural change to try and move people away from use of the private car. This has included the development of a rapid transit system, which is coming online this year, efforts to reduce speeds and also car parking within the city, and also hard infrastructure around e-vehicles, investing in cycling, for example. Bristol is a well-known cycling city in the UK. But none of this could have been done alone by the city or by the actors even within the city. Support from many different actors is crucial to local authorities and local stakeholders deliver and realise their potential in terms of fighting climate change. All the investment and the planning, the long-term planning by the council has been very important, but working with partners both locally, nationally, in Europe and beyond. So in Bristol, we created something called the Bristol Green Capital Partnership nearly 10 years ago now, and it's a network of over 800 organisations working in the city towards making Bristol a low-carbon city, a low-carbon place to live. So they all have a shared ambition and a shared goal, and over the last decade have been helping to move the city in that direction. We've also been very keen and made efforts to engage citizens in the work, both in 2015, before and afterwards as well. In particular, school children. We see that engaging young people is very important because they then learn about sustainability and take that learning forward, both in the classroom but at home as well. We're lucky in the city that over 50% of the people say they are doing something to tackle climate change in their daily life. So a lot of people, as the Green Capital Partnership suggests, are active on climate change, but it remains an ongoing challenge to continue to engage people to help them change behaviour and engage in the process. Now, we've received backing from central government for our Green Capital year, but also for a number of the projects and initiatives which we've undertaken. And our future ambitions, for example, we want to take our investment in energy to over £1 billion, will require further support from government, but also the ability to leverage finance from the private sector. and that's something we're actively working on at the moment. Last but not least, Bristol is a very active European city. We've worked on a number of EU-funded projects. For example, the European Commission, European Investment Bank's Eleanor programme underpinned a lot of the energy investment programme, giving us the capacity to take forward work in that area. And we'll be a lead city in a Horizon 2020 Replicate project, which is a smart cities and communities project focused on smart grids, where we're working with a number of other European cities. So he was provided vital financing for a number of projects that we're working on in this area. The final message, I think, is that such support, as you mentioned, is crucial, and ongoing support, ongoing engagement and collaboration with cities will help the EU and indeed the world meet the climate goals that it set out. That's crucial, I think, to help cities collaborate with each other at all different levels of government, so that they can, as the title of this event says, power Europe towards a zero carbon future.
Paul, very interesting, and yeah, thanks also for pointing towards the social dimension of behavior and fuel poverty. Two points you've mentioned, very important in this dimension as well, and also for the future to reach our climate goals. Change of behavior will be very important. We might come back to that in the Q&A. I'm handing over to Adam White. Adam has been is the author of our guidance report, as said, an extraction of knowledge and experience on how to best develop these long-term plans. And can you give us a sense on how guidance can help cities and regions basically to do good long-term planning, and what are the main ingredients actually? Yeah.
So yes, I'm Adam White, working here in the European Policy Office. I'm not sure if this is working again. Yes,
Another slide.
Can we go to the next slide?
If you go ahead.
And the next one. Okay, so as Imke said, this was a big life-funded project that initially was looking at national 2050 strategies. And I've realized that more and more there's so much going on in this area that regions and cities should increasingly become our focus, and that will be the case as we go forward with hopefully a kind of a follow-on project from the middle of this year. A number of publications you can see, the two I've put up here are A Climate for the Future, which is the publication which assesses national plans. We did an assessment of the submissions under the monitoring mechanism regulation, which was a kind of a governance regulation in the EU, which required member states to have strategies updated every 2 years. So the first submission was in 2015, the second submission was in 2017, and then on your right is the guidance document, which was initially written in 2017. There's an update that's just about to be published, and I think the guidance is a strong document. It brings together information from a wide literature review we do, but it also includes an extensive bibliography, which I think is hopefully a valuable resource for anyone looking to write a long-term strategy, because it shows you where you can get all the different information you could possibly need, really, from some very detailed reports to some more high-level policy reports. So that's what we've published so far, examples of what we've published so far. This is just to show you a bit the scores that member states have had. And you can see from the 2015 score, light green, to the 2017 score, there's generally been an improvement, particularly if you look at Ireland and Germany have improved their scores, for example. But you can see there's only 13 member states that have a long-term strategy that we counted as being a valuable, recognizable long-term low-carbon development strategy, and a wide range of scores from France doing pretty well, Ireland and UK doing quite well, all the way down to Greece not doing so well, and Cyprus are included but have a draft plan. So you can see there's a lot of scope for improvement, and we are increasingly thinking that a lot of that improvement can come bottom up with input from cities and regions. We've heard already about cities and regions and how well they can develop strategies that can raise the ambition at the national level as well. And as Inka mentioned, my focus has mainly been on the guidance, which I mentioned before with the quotations, and these are kind of the 10 areas that we felt you could categorize effort in. Obviously, starting with the ambition of the strategy in line with the Paris Agreement. You can see all the way through. I won't read through them because you can read them for yourselves or you can read the guidance document. But I think what's interesting to say, particularly for the cities and regions, is that, and as I personally experienced, my first job was in London for the Greater London Authority, working on sustainable mobility, particularly in London. Cities can direct action, they can act quickly, and they are that level closer to citizens and to the electorate. So they have a good understanding of what can work well in their area, good interaction with communities, and can act relatively quickly. So we think that's a particularly interesting aspect of climate planning for cities and regions. This goes a bit to what I was saying about where an increase in ambition in national plans can come from. We strongly feel that there is a ripple effect from EU level with the 2050 roadmaps that are in place and are being updated, to national 2050 plans and laws, to regional and municipal plans, and to even more local level plans than that. And they can each reinforce each other. The guidance should be relevant to all of them, obviously, to different extents in some different areas. It all builds from each other with a level of ambition that they each recognise. And particularly, we think it's important to recognise the importance and the strength of consultative and even participative processes in developing these plans, with local engagement, local buy-in to both what the plans set out to do and how they are delivered. We think is extremely important to get to where we need to be, because it's a radical transition that needs to happen to keep us to less than 1.5 degrees. It's going to be a very different way of life. We think it's going to be a better way of life, but everyone needs to be convinced of that. And I think cities and regions have a part to play in that engagement and that difference in enthusiasm from communities. Oh, okay. Me, you there. Can we go back a couple? Okay, that'll do. So WWF itself is engaged more broadly than the MaxiMiseR project. We have what's called a one city challenge. That's recognizing that cities are going to double their population by 2050. They already have 70% of global CO2 emissions, and there's going to be $350 trillion. That's just the infrastructure investment in cities in the next 30 years. So the City Challenge looks for leadership in renewables and a sustainable future. It has a kind of a set reporting program against the global template that everyone is assessed in a structured way, and it recognizes the different starting positions of different cities, so it's like a level playing field. And there's an evaluation by jury as to which cities are kind of doing best, leading in their different areas. It looks particularly, like I said before, to engage the public and encourage understanding of what needs to happen at city level to help address the climate challenge we face, to help keep temperatures down. And it encourages cities to adopt science-based targets for them to use action plans with clear implementation strategies for delivery, and to focus particularly in cities on sustainable mobility. Transport is often one of the highest sources of CO2 emissions in cities. And you see over the last 4 years, the winners have been Vancouver, Seoul, and Paris, and that challenge will be continuing into the future. I think that's it from me for now, and I look forward to questions.
I think we talk through the 10 criteria again.
Sure.
Later. Yeah, I'm looking at Dina from the European Commission to basically provide some ideas and answers on how the Commission thinks cities and regions should work with national governments, and how the EU can support this work. And yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, I'm very pleased to be here, and I understand that I am bringing a little bit different perspective because I'm coming from the adaptation unit, so the resilience part. But I will explain you because how we see it in DG Klima, we work a lot together with mitigation and adaptation. So as already mentioned, the Covenant of Mayors, the city's perspective is perhaps a good example of how they deal with integrated approach where they face different risks, and so green infrastructure can be a reinforcing factor for mitigation or human health, and so in perspective. So I would like to just say that we are having the European strategy to adapt to climate change, and now if I can handle this. So the perspective which I want to bring in is really how we work with regions and cities, and the adaptation strategy is very much based on the multi-level governance. We work together with the member states, and we work with regions and cities, and I see that strategy has been adopted in 2013, and throughout these years we have learned more and more that this experience brings benefits. And currently is a good time. The strategy is under the evaluation, so it's a good time to look back what has been achieved, what could be done better. And so I will bring you a few examples of how we work with cities within our strategy. And maybe just start to get into that. I want to make a link with the low carbon and resilience. So let me just mention an example of Portugal. Portugal is very much dependent on hydropower, and in fact 30% of its energy mix is made up of hydropower. So and when we see that the climate is changing, and there are projections that water scarcity and droughts are going to affect Portugal a lot in the future. So we should have this also taking into consideration when we speak about low carbon future and what decisions to take. That's just to link it to the adaptation. And so the strategy itself, it has broad priorities. So the promoting by member states, we are promoting national adaptation frameworks which are really inclusive, which are giving roles to cities and regions. We have developed a scoreboard with 33 governance indicators that the cities can answer the questions and see which components would be necessary for their national adaptation strategies. For example, the vertical coordination between national, European and city level, or horizontal coordination with other sectors, disaster risk or water management, and also the transboundary aspects. So these scoreboard criteria is also in a way helping to make a stronger national adaptation framework. And on our work with cities and regions, I will have a separate slide. So the other big priority of the adaptation strategy is the knowledge gaps, to address the knowledge gaps. So work with a lot of the research community. The European Joint Research Center is doing for us the climate projections and modeling the different impacts on sectors. And we work with Horizon 2020, where we feed in the knowledge gaps necessary, and also the urban perspective is much in there. There are many calls from Horizon 2020 on nature-based solutions and really city-level action. So and then we have also the Climate Adapt platform with all information, where also we have part for urban adaptation and maps and projections there. And the The other big priority is also that we work a lot with other policies at the EU level to integrate climate mitigation and adaptation into also other policies. For example, we had a big priority in this kind of perspective to integrate climate into the European Investment and Structural Fund. So we have worked on the legislation so that climate is really integrated in these funds, and also the partnership agreements and programs are raising climate objectives. As a result, there was 25% of the funds will be dedicated to climate. So maybe I will not talk, but this is also to make us thinking of the future MFF and what has been good and what should more be. Just also the last point on the slide is to invite you for the public consultation. Your perspectives are very interesting also. As we are now having this evaluation of the strategy and looking back at what has been achieved. I'll be faster on the next slide.
No problem.
The first,
Not sure what. Okay, thanks.
The Conference of Mayors is where our focus goes a lot. So, it was already mentioned, this is a very big initiative, and it has evolved over time. It is now even becoming global. In 2015, the initiative reinforced, and now all cities who are up to the covenant are signing up to mitigate or to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40%, and also undertake adaptation action. So, and here maybe to mention also that regions and cities and provinces are really important actors in the covenant. They are filling this coordinative role. For example, you have provinces in France or like Länsstyrelsen and in Sweden. They have a role to coordinate the local action, so that, and they are like, these are very important in mobilizing cities to do the work, and to also link with European level goals and targets. And in the covenant, this governance structure works very well. So we have good regions in Barcelona where you have 100 cities are mobilized in the region to mitigation and adaptation action. And maybe the next. So the Covenant of Mayors offers, this is just of course a lot of capacity building and awareness raising events throughout the year, and guidance and support tools were mentioned also previously that necessary, and that's what cities really expect their work on develop and integrate and implement their local strategies, and also a lot of exchange of knowledge. We had the twinnings is a very good program, and the cities really like them. So we have had a very high. The last twinning initiative in our autumn, there were like more than 100 cities applied for this goal. And we have monitoring reporting framework in place, and the Covenant of Mayors board has been created where mayors come together with also city network presidents, and they meet commissioner and try to link their work together with the European legislation, such as mobility package, because mayors will be those which will implement that on the ground. And there are two upcoming events very soon: the Covenant of Mayors Investment Forum, and also the Covenant of Mayors ceremony, where good practices examples will be showcased. Maybe next. And another developing working strand in DG Klima, we follow a lot the urban agenda. The urban agenda was established by the Pact of Amsterdam in 2016, and it's really growing at the moment. the 12 partnerships up and running, where city perspective is important, and you can see there are many which are related to our topic of today: air quality, energy transition, urban mobility, climate adaptation, circular economy. I am following particularly the adaptation partnership, and maybe we will go next already so that we can see how the adaptation partnership, how it looks like. It's a very innovative governance approach. It is coordinated by the city of Genova, and then we have 4 states around the table and many cities. So also stakeholders, city works and regional networks, and also the DGs, the commission around the table. And it's actually very nice that in this setting to have a diverse discussion, and also that the commission is not in lead, or it's really bottom-up approach and a very inclusive setting. And the idea is to develop an action plan on adaptation by the summer, where the concrete actions will be proposed to address the knowledge, the better regulation, and the resources objectives. So, to financing and things like that. And also to mention that the partnerships work close together with other partnerships, so it's not only this dialogue is also to be in synergy with other. We have met, for example, circular economy partnership, where water reuse is a topic. So that's where we have the overlap. So we have to bring that into our or so the dialogue between the partnerships is also ongoing. So that's the example of. And final also slide is about that climate doesn't, the effect doesn't end at the borders of the city or region, and therefore we have this cross-border or region-to-region cooperation, and also macro-regional cooperation, and then MDG climate support, and mixing climate into all of these 4 EU-level macro-regional strategies. There are very good examples in the Baltic Sea. There is a climate dialogue platform where all member states, all countries around the Baltic Sea come together and they talk about climate and also low carbon economy, but also adaptation. They depend on the subjects. So it is a governance instrument to better implement climate action region as a whole, and there is the whole adaptation strategy as well developed for the Baltic Sea region. Or Alpine strategy, they are having a specific working group on climate risk, because of course Alpine is very much affected by climate change. So also the territorial cooperation programs where we mainstream climate, they are very successful as well as a tool to help to implement or to get regions together to work to find responses to common climate challenges, like joint strategies or action plans. So we have, for example, in France-Italy program like Alcotra or Alpine Space, and so it's another instrument how the climate change issues can be addressed. That's about it for me. I look forward to more discussion, because I am very aware that I brought in a bit the adaptation aspect, but please take it the governance part. I think is quite interesting to also see how it can be applied also for mitigation and aspects of multi-level governance. It's very important.
Thanks, Ina. And we have now time to bring pieces together. I think we have a couple of loose ends here, and maybe I have to talk as well about time frames and what the perspective of some actions are. But thanks a lot. I want to open up now for question and answers. The way I do it is I ask people in the room for questions first. During that time, people online can send their questions to Jane. She is taking care and will bring in the questions into the room. We have more question and answers, so yeah, please, I'm open for to take any questions.
Good morning.
Can you say your name and the organization you're representing, please?
My name is Chris Goswell. I'm consulting in Brussels with on sustainability and climate with Think Cities. And I thank you all for your presentations. I found them all very interesting. I had a specific question for our city and region presenters. To what you mentioned, something that struck me in your presentation is that you discussed the objectives that you have set as a region for regional carbon objectives, and that there was a kind of a flash when you realized that you were not on track to meet that, and then made a course correction, which you're involved in today. I'm curious to know kind of what you would recommend to the cities as they maybe haven't even real level of kind of thinking that you are involved in, but what is the recommendation both in terms of kind of how you structure this process and also how you set priorities that would then build into an action plan? Talk a little bit about that process to help cities that may not have an awareness of where to even start. That would be helpful. Thank you.
I take 3 questions before handing over. Please.
Hi, I'm again from CCP Europe. It's an environmental NGO. I have a question for you. I wonder if you consider, in the public procurement you described, do you also consider supplier level, meaning quantity level, criteria or assessment, and product level? And a question for Phil. How do you attract investment and challenges for big-scale bankable projects to get private investment?
I've got a question. Sorry, my name is Greg Jones. I work for CPMR, which is like a network based in Brussels. Our members are regional governments mainly across Europe, including beyond the EU. My question is about the importance of the national policy dimension or context versus the importance of EU context. As Adam sort of pointed out, this ripple effect from the EU level across. Varied performance, as we all in the slides, between the number of member states that have long-term plans for decarbonisation. I think it was 13 mentioned, obviously we have 27 member states and varied performance there. So the question is, national level decisive if there is a wider EU context, and particularly for Tula with Sweden, is a strong national the fact that enables Västra to perform effectively. But I hope the answer isn't totally yes, because I think the EU level is important, but I think we need to get that question out there because there clearly are underperformers across the EU level. Everyone works within that EU context, which to me the difference comes elsewhere.
I suggest we start with this first round. I think, Tula, the first question went to you.
Yes, as I understood it, it was how did we do this process of prioritizing in our action plan from going to this a lot of different actions with a lot of energy but not really reaching the goal. And I think that different things are important when you want to do a process like that. One is that it takes time. And it takes time because you have to involve a lot of people in this. Because I think that those of you who are working with this on a daily basis, perhaps you already have an idea of what would be the things that would move the society towards the direction and what would not be the thing. But I think the importance is to involve everyone in this work, because we need to have to work together in this to focus together. If someone is, it's like with all decisions. If you don't have everyone in the room with you in the decision, you will have more work afterwards, because they will not respect this decision. You have to do this process of getting in view. The process, it's very hard, because a lot of you would have to kill your darlings, and that is not an easy process. Is that your question?
Yeah,
Yeah, Paul, I think the other two questions went to you regarding company level business indicators and investment.
Actually, it was also for Tula, your public procurement question.
Yes.
Maybe I'll kick off on the investment one then maybe. I think again, time is a crucial factor and building up experience and expertise. We started off at a very small scale. So as I mentioned in the opening remarks, the aim to become a green capital or to move on this sustainability journey that Bristol is on started a long time ago, over 10 years or even longer. And at that point we were working at a very small scale on small projects, which maybe attracted local authority investment mixed with some private sector investment. And gradually, as we've learned, as we've improved, as we've raised the bar locally, we've built confidence, we've built experience, we've built learning, which we've managed to build into other projects which have increased in scale as we've moved through the last decade and beyond 2015. So I think time is a crucial factor, starting small, building up bigger, engaging, as you say, so it's a different area, but engaging deeper, engaging different stakeholders in the work you're doing so that it has a broad base. And actually, it will breed success and it will bring more investment from different sources. And as it suggested, we've had investments from national government, from EU funding sources, particularly EIB and Horizon 2020. But we've also been involved in some of the cooperative territorial programs that mentioned in the presentation as well. I think that's one of the key ways of attracting investment, is to build up gradually over time and ensure that you gain confidence, you gain learning, and you improve your reputation, which will enable you to leverage different sources of investment. Just briefly on the point about national and EU, which is more or less important. I think that each is important. Of course, it depends on the instrument, which one's sort of, whether it's binding or non-binding, and how the different levels contribute to the overall targets. And both can create a framework in which cities or regions work. So both levels are important and together play a role. But I think for us, what's probably most important is actually the city or the region level, and what are our cities and regions motivated to do from the bottom up. So the top can set sort of targets and frameworks and guidance, but the crucial thing is what do cities and regions, what are they willing, able, capable of delivering from the bottom up, and just that have broad basis support moving a city or region in the direction towards targets, which may or may not be binding, is a crucial factor in getting towards.
Thanks. You want to respond to the question of the importance of the different levels in terms of the performance of long-term strategies, and maybe with you.
I think I'd agree with what was just said before. I think that it's important for the EU to set the level of ambition that even comes from the UNFCCC level, and then I think to support the kind of modelling that can go into the context that has to happen over time. But I think delivery at a more regional city level is crucial, and every financial support from the national level is important. I think it's a ripple effect where they each kind of impact each other, and I think taking into account strategy different levels and the timing of those strategies being developed is also important. It's a bit of level is being developed at different times and how that's taken into account, but whether it's a 2030 plan or a 2050 plan and which is leading the other is also crucial. We always like to see the longer term strategy set out first and then working back to see what we need to do in order to get to that final goal.
Yeah, to add to that point of which level, I think one experience which is we take as a key experience also for influencing the future policy making is that even if countries are not fully supportive in terms of the policy designed around that ambition, they in their long-term strategies, they've reflected what the EU Commission basically has done with their 2011 roadmap in setting an ambition level of 80 to 95% reduction. We see in almost all strategies that this level is reflected. And it's very, very important that this helps national level to basically write their long-term strategies. And this is what we see key in the next 2 to 3 years. The Commission has to set out to translate the Paris Agreement and to set out the pathway for Europe, where to end in mid-century, around 2050. And I think there is a very important role for the EU basically to frame and to give the level of ambition with an updated roadmap. So that's a key lesson learned from the project, actually.
Sure.
Questions from people online?
Questions so far? No.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I give a comment to the question about companies and public procurement? We work with the companies in many different ways. Sometimes it could be an innovative project where it's not really a public procurement, but to start. We also work with them when we have an idea, we could have meetings with a lot of them. And then we also have assessments in the procurement. For example, they should have a general environmental work and that kind of thing. So we work them a little bit different depending on what kind of thing we want to procure. And then to your question, Greg, about the national and European level. We feel sometimes that the regions would like to go further at the national level, dare to do, and we find the support in the European level in that ambition. So in that sense, I think that the regional and city level work well together with the European level.
Great. Good. I was sort of hoping that might become.
Yes, maybe I can add on the national level and regional level. So when we are doing the evaluation of the strategy, one of the findings was also what triggered adaptation action at the national and local levels, and so the answers were different answers. But one was the existence of the European framework, the existing guidance. So we're happy to see that, but also of course global events, the increased risks and the disasters. So there were also other factors that we were happy to see that also the European level can help. But the other side is also depends on the advancement of the countries, because for those who are beginners who don't know, I think for them that's very good to have this your level and guidance there. But those which are already far away and are implementing, like for example Sweden, on adaptation, you have very strong regions and locals, and they would need more different kind of support from the EU level. It wouldn't be enough anymore. Good action.
Other comments? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Stan from Rich Econometrics. Question for could you say a bit more about the methodology that you used for the assessment of the strategies and that one chart with scoring, national scoring in particular?
So we work with Ecologic, which is a think tank based in Berlin, and we had a series of criteria against which each strategy was marked by at least 2 people and then moderated. As the criteria kind of reflect the certain extent, the guidance that we produced as I mentioned. So it covered things like the level of ambition, whether the strategy covered all economic sectors or a limited number of economic sectors, the degree to which the strategy was implementable, so actionable, the degree of was attached to different actions, and particular responsible ministries attached to different actions. How integrated the strategies were, the kind of the 2050 strategy was with either different sectoral strategies or regional strategies, or strategies with different time horizons. And we also looked at the degree to which the strategies had a clear political commitment and leadership, so whether they had a forward from the head of state, for example, clearly signed off at cabinet level, where they had cross-party involvement at a political level in their development and agreement. And there were some more technical elements like a degree of transparency of the information, so a layperson understands what went into the decision-making process for the strategy and the level of targets and actions chosen. So it wasn't just about making all the data available, but making it more or less understandable. And monitoring, so a clear kind of monitoring framework, whether there was good stakeholder participation, as I mentioned before, whether it was already having a consultative process was pretty good, but if it had a participative process, that was scored higher. What the underlying analytical basis was, so the degree of modelling that went into the number of scenarios, whether there was sensitivity analysis or not, and then the review process, so whether there was reviews envisaged or whether there were both regular reviews and, for example, triggered reviews. So when the Paris Agreement included the 1.5 target, that in an ideal world would have triggered national authorities to review their plans to see whether they were going to be in line with that higher level of ambition.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Louise from the European Climate Foundation. I have a few questions. If we could just already touch upon the roadmap. My question on that is for Dina. Could you maybe say something about the Commission's plans and the update of the 2060 roadmap? And I also just wanted to, you ended your presentation with the importance of multi-level governance. You also mentioned the governance regulation that the European Parliament just voted upon last week. Significantly increasing the ambition of the regulation on the 2050 aspect, and just wondering how you perceive that. It increases the public participation very much also for the regional level. So I think that's very important in this. And then I have two other questions. I think both to Julia and Paul. You mentioned wish list to national government, and you already just mentioned the fact that you find often more support on EU level rather than at national level for more ambition. What do you feel you are listened to at the national level, and how can that be improved, like the participation in that context?
Thanks. Jane?
Well, the question for me actually, rather than ask you to say, and of course it follows on from Louise's last one, which is if either of you have been involved in a process, a long-term strategy process at national level, so in what kind of role, and was it just a good consultation, was there coordination, do you feel you've actually been part of that, or would like?
We have one for Dina here from Karina Bolton-Hansen. So, is there already a central process designed for ensuring that subnational climate commitments and local governments reported through the Cabinet of Mayors are fully integrated in updated and raised EU climate ambitions? You got a lot this time, right? If you want to have time, we can also start on the right side. But yeah,
but I think I will disappoint you a little bit because I'm working in an adaptation unit, so I haven't I'm not following, I mean, I'm not in charge of the low carbon strategy of the GPM. Of course, I know that we have the low carbon strategies and so, but I will not tell you the latest update. I really, then I should ask for information, but because, yeah, on that one I won't be able to perhaps give you more detail. I do know, I think already. And for the governance topic, it's a similar and we are following a lot the governance proposal now and in discussion, but we are looking at the adaptation part of it because there is adaptation part in the governance as well, but it's still in discussion if in which format it's going to remain there or but your question was more on the inclusiveness and there was a decision, but I think that was very positive what you mentioned, but I won't have a detailed answer on these topics, and also that I really concentrate on the adaptation and I'm working I'm not at the top level of these discussions, so I'm not I of course could get information if I need it. So I'm sorry. And for the monitoring and reporting, the Council of Mayors we have developed there is a monitoring and reporting for cities in place, but within the last year we have also adaptation components developed in there. That was my kind of work that I worked on. So there is mitigation adaptation reporting in place. Cities are reporting regularly every 2 years. The Commission Research Center is the reports and assessing results, and on that basis we can say how the Covenant of Mayors signatories are performing or reaching their targets. I had it on my slide that 27% is going to be reached by 2020. So that's based on the analysis. And so in this way, but the question was more how this information links to the national.
Well, no, it's not EU climate ambition. How it so my understanding of the question, reading it is literally how to ensure that subnational climate commitments from local governments, which are reported through the Covenant of Mayors, to feed into, they're fully integrated into raised climate ambition.
Yeah. It's very aligned with the European policy. The new Covenant of Mayors is now having even more ambitious targets, at least asking the 40% greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2030, which is in line with the carbon energy package. So that is as a minimum, but the cities can go beyond, and so that's the line. And how also the dialogue. I mentioned that there is a Covenant Mayors board, mayors are participating, and they have a chance to meet the commissioner to speak about how their action can also adapt to the climate energy package and how they can translate with their actions on the ground. For example, now the next forum on 22nd of February will be really focusing on these aspects. So take the links between the actions on the ground and the wider European framework.
I'm looking to my side. Tula, you want to start?
Yes. How much we are participating on the national level? Let's start there. Yes, as a region, we are invited in different ways to be a part of the national level decision making. It could be in forms of consultation with a bigger group, or it could be in terms of a smaller group actually putting out strategies and so on. We of course believe we could be invited even more. I think we have more to come up with. And I'd also like to add that difference between the city level and the national level is that we are closer in the city and in the regions to our citizens. And we would like to work with not only the climate goal but other goals as well. And sometimes it's easier to address other goals to get where we would like to come. Let me give give you some examples. Air quality. All the actions towards air quality are the same that we would like to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But sometimes it's easier to go to our citizens and say, would you like to have a clean air for your children? Like your sister-in-law who's pregnant, would you like her to be put out to a lot of emissions? No, of course not. So we like to have an emission-free zone where you can walk on Sundays. Yes, that sounds nice. And then you have an easier door in to do this change you would like to do. We are closer to the citizens in the cities and in the regions. It's easier to come up with those committed goals that we are trying to address to move to a sustainable city. Waste is another one. To collect the waste and produce biogas and have a sustainable waste system with circular economy. It's easier to address this on a city level. So I think this is also one of the differences between the city regional and national levels, which could affect this, the differences in ambition.
Do you want to respond as well to the question about in how far the region has been part of the long-term planning process? The question Jane posed. How are you had the opportunity to make experience with basically developing such a long-term vision?
Yes, we are part of these processes in the national level to do this. We have fossil-free transport sector action plan, for example, on national level. We have been part of that. So yes, we are invited. Sometimes, yes, sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a similar picture in the case of the one you just outlined. So cities, including Bristol, are engaged with government on topics related to climate change, and I think that can be through a variety of mechanisms and tools, whether it's formal consultations, meetings, making different representations, and both independently as individual cities, but also as groups of cities. And I think we all know that aggregating voices through networks is an effective way of influencing the policy process, whether in the member states or here in Brussels as well. So Bristol is a part of the UK Core Cities Network, which is the 10 biggest cities in the UK outside of London, and that as a group will engage with UK government on topics around climate mitigation and adaptation. So I think we're well connected into those discussions. As you say, the extent to which that could be more is always possible, or the extent to which it's ignored or taken on board, will depend from issue to issue. But it's important to obviously be part of that. I don't have any personal experience of being involved in national sort of process of putting together the plans. My role is much more Brussels focused, as you'd expect, but I'm sure colleagues back home will have been involved in those processes in a similar way to how outlined in June. And I'd add that that experience of having a good level of engagement with government in the UK is reflected here in Brussels as well, in that cities are increasingly a focus of EU policymakers' attention, and you've outlined some of the measures which are in place to engage with and cooperate with and support cities in their actions to deliver on climate change. So we're very appreciative of a number of those measures and keen to continue engaging on them as well.
Thanks. Last round of questions.
I'm Philippe Smith, working for Flemish Minister for Environment, Nature and Agriculture. I have some questions. First off, for the region and the city. I'd like to know how big is the part of the total emissions of your region, your city, which are responsible for? I think that's a very important question for the monitoring of the plans, because I have a feeling, maybe I have to explain, in Flanders, we are responsible for all Flemish emissions there are. That's what the Flemish government is the opinion of the Flemish government. And in that sense, of course, all the emissions there are, we have to lower them. So that's the responsibility of the government. But we have sometimes the feeling when we have the debates inside Flanders, also with the government of nature, there's always a debate that they make a lot of plans, but say, okay, but we are only responsible for a few teams, and all the rest, the high level has to do, which is Flanders inside the Belgian politics, for its responsibility. And that's the kind of debate there is. And I think it's important to know how big is your responsibility, and do you take all this, or is it just a part of it? Then I'm also interested in the housing issue. In Belgium, and especially in Flanders, we have a lot of old buildings. So energy efficiency of housing is a very important topic in climate policy. But of course, there is always the dream that government has to pay for the renovation of it, but we can pay for everyone, of course. Now, I would like to know if you have some good examples to this private investments to renovate the houses, if you have some good examples for this. Then for the transport, the mobility, I was wondering how far your responsibility goes. Is the infrastructure you are responsible for? Is it the public transport, or is it also the tax on cars? Is it also the possibility to create areas which are car-free or not? Do you have some experience in those kind of things, and which is working? Thank you very much.
I have a question or two, basically. The one is, you've been talking about engaging in you close to citizens and the process of engaging and activating them. Can you give us a sense on how you do that in terms of how do you talk? What are the ways of exchanging with citizens and getting their sense of how important and how relevant they feel climate mitigation is? And I think you've hinted towards health issues as one vehicle to get them, but I think this process is really important to create acceptance and interest in this transition. So I'm just wondering if you can share some experience. And on the adaptation side, I felt like there wasn't much about the long-term perspective. Maybe you can give us a sense of whether you take a perspective of looking up to 2050, or what is the relevant time horizon. I think you made the point about future investments. We feel it's very important with this topic, long-term perspective, as Adam said, the backcasting, seeing as the right pathway and where's the right investment. So how that in the policy measures you presented.
We have a question from Lisa from EG. She's asking, it's for Dina. Sorry, Dina, another one for you. During your presentation, you mentioned the link with MFF. Will adaptation and mitigation be a priority in the next MFF? Is there any coordination dialogue with other policy sectors, such as regional and cohesion policy?
There was a question in the room.
I had one, yes. My question goes for Adam. I'm Julian Berry from Brussels Environment, so the service for Brussels Capital Region for Energy and Environment. You mentioned a particular project that MaxiMiseR is doing for cities this year. Can you tell us a little bit more about what is this? Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Eva Tamer from Estonian Environment Representation. I'm Councillor for Environment, and my areas of expertise are climate change and circular economy. So that's what I'm and I'm very excited to hear about specific examples in the region and the cities. And I'm wondering, I mean, both areas represented here today, you have a long experience with issues and visual plans and already seen some else as well. And I was wondering if you could share a success story where you decided on a specific measure in a strategy and you saw that it outperformed the expectations, or you got more or less results than expected. Because I understood that you also explained that in different areas there are different different results. Kind of different, relatively different, whether it's related to climate change and carbon, or maybe related to waste, or resource efficiency? That would be interesting to know. I think also for that, I mean, if there's something interesting you can share on adaptation that has been done in some areas that has worked well, it would be interesting to know.
Thanks. Who wants to start?
Oh, a lot of questions. Yes. Let me start with the question of what we are responsible for. My organization have no legal responsibility for any emissions, but we've taken on all emissions in the region as our area we work with. We all have a true ability to affect the emissions where we are involved. Either we have them on ourselves or it's a product that we buy, but we try to work with all of them. And the tools we have, yes, we have funding for infrastructure, and we have the public transport. We know taxes that we can change in terms of environmental aspects. And we work together with the city of Gothenburg, which can affect the city. They have soon the right to make emission-free zones, for example. They can work with free parking for environmental cars, which they have done, but it turned out to be so many of them, so they have to work with their tools. We have a charging, what is it called? In the peak hours. Congestion charging. And also, it's also possible to give access to the bus lane, which they do in Norway, where they get a lot of e-vehicles, for example. Was that an answer to your question? Would you like to add? Should we continue with the housing?
Yeah, let's go to
For the housing and our buildings and renovations, and some examples, I had a picture that I was hesitating if I should take along or not. It's our new Black Diamond. It's an old house from the 70s that they just renovated. It's now a passive energy standard. It doesn't use energy, and it produces electricity because it's all now covered with some electricity. But it's a tricky question, and I think the question to address is if you put into renovation and you get a lower use of energy, how this cost be transferred, because it's two different people paying. It's the people who are renting and it's the owner of the house. So how could you find a business model for this? If you do that, I think you are home, because it is cost effective in the long run to do renovation.
Thanks, Ulla.
Yeah, pick up on a couple of points, lots of questions there. It's true, it's important obviously to be aware of what's within your field of responsibility, particularly in terms of the emissions reductions you can achieve. I don't know the exact figures, but what I can say is in Bristol, as I mentioned, the council's really taken a lead in trying to lead by example in making what it is as an organisation and reduce its emissions as far as possible, taking into account all of the infrastructure and buildings and responsibilities it has. But with the city, it works very much in a sort of partnership approach. We just established something called the City Office, which brings together many local stakeholders to work on common challenges within the city, including climate change. So, that lead by example spreads quickly through to other actors who, as I've mentioned earlier, are very engaged on these topics and keen on supporting the city generally in its sustainability and climate change journey. On housing schemes or schemes around energy efficiency of buildings, we have a number of good examples. A scheme called Walnut Bristol, which was about retrofitting and insulating council housing and supporting the residents to do that effectively. We also had a number of solar-powered schemes where we've had projects helping residents put solar panels on roofs and generate electricity and feed back into the grid from that. So there's a number of good examples, always slightly different financing arrangements and governance arrangements. But some of the kind of smaller projects which I mentioned that we worked on over time and built up and scaled into bigger investment projects. On transport, a mix of responsibilities. As I mentioned at the beginning, we've tried to combine investment in hard infrastructure, so whether that's e-vehicles or a rapid transit system, or some infrastructure with this kind of the social angle, so trying to affect behavioural change, encouraging people to their cars onto public transport, to walk, to cycle, and use other methods of carbon-free transport. I think engage with citizens is a good question. I think it's about the topics you're mentioning. You can pick topics which are of importance to citizens. Their quality is one which is very relevant, very tangible and evident for them to see, but it's also about mechanisms. How do you do that? We have something called the Bristol approach in Bristol, which is about putting in place a way of engaging citizens. It's around a city's commons approach, where it's more to a digital transition, but there are also sustainability elements. So we've built up a kind of mechanism and a framework which helps different actors within the city, including the council, to engage with local people. And then maybe finally on a success story, we found this work very well. And again, I mentioned at the beginning is the work we've done with young people over time. And here, I think some of the bits have really exceeded our expectations. So one example was a project called One Tree Per Child, where we've encouraged all school-aged children to plant a tree, whether in a school or in their garden or in a local park, and then do an educational project around that to understand the environmental impact it has. And that's been very successful across the city and even spread to other places. And another one which has worked very well is an online game which was developed during our Green Capital year around a character called Sean the Sheep, who's from Aardman Animations. And we worked with Aardman to develop a game which had an educational purpose and was again to help young people understand how to make their cities sustainable. And that, working with DG Environment and the Commission, has just been translated into all EU languages, and there are 28 versions of that available being played. So that's something which has really worked well and engaged young people in sustainability and impacting climate change.
Thanks, Paulina. Okay, yes, so for me the question was a long-term perspective for the adaptation policy. And yes, it's a very, very good question, because adaptation, do have this quantitative goal. It's very difficult. It's not like mitigation, you can say zero carbon emissions or reduction by a certain amount. So we are talking about resilience and how to be resilient to different climate impacts. So it's a difficult to quantify a goal, so it's a more qualitative goal. Then we talk about adaptive capacity, so to be able to adapt to the new information coming from science, which scenario is the world discussed on. For example, the temperature, will it be 1.2? Are we adapting to 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees Celsius? It's a big difference. Or currently the strategy as it was, it was mentioned that we have to adapt to the 1 degree Celsius on the basis of the current information. So these are the discussion. So, but of course, we also in the common mayors, for example, the cities are asked to present their long-term goals. So usually the time perspective is 2030, 2040. And you have a valid question. We have to work on a longer perspective. I think that's something to about and concentrate a bit more on. So, and then on the next MFF, I guess the debates are starting. The team is actively taking part in this discussion. I think that first of all, we have to really look back what has been achieved. There have been great achievements in terms of climate expenditure within the, for example, European Investment and Structural Fund, but also in Horizon you have 35% climate. I don't know if that ambition will be kept for the next MFF. I cannot tell yet. We will, of course, from the climate side, do everything to get climate into the next MFF and really ambition, and we have to move on the good results. And as I also mentioned, city dimension should be reinforced. Also, the cross-border or territorial cooperation is a good instrument. We will also make our towards that as well. we haven't yet provided our input because the debate will start now in March, April, so that's to come. But of course, climate expenditure and climate goals will be embraced, but to what extent that I cannot tell. And then the last question on good practices, of course, that's a good. I didn't include in my presentation because it's very short, and we have plenty of very good practice examples in cities, Copenhagen or Antwerp or Bratislava. And if you go to the MERS website, and it's supposed very soon to be a new website, so I will also see where to find what, because the initiative has been growing and there's a lot of information in that website, so it should have a website soon. So you will find case studies and leaflets on good practices. Also, there is a very good leaflet on good practices in mitigation and adaptation together. How it, for example, Bologna has done urban gardens and to both adapt to the heat, also for the floods, at the same time to improve air quality. So this holistic approach examples are there. Please come on the mayor's website. And next time I'll bring brochures. I should distribute those.
There was a question for Adam.
Yeah, so there's kind of two aspects to the work. One is the City Challenge, which I mentioned, and that's more being run by WWF International. I can put you in touch with colleagues for more information on that if you like. And then also we're looking to build on this MaxiMiseR project with a follow-on project called Catalyst. And that will go into more depth both on the technical side with a kind of a more refined, more granular assessment of plans and possibly different kinds of plans. And particularly our work on that will be more of a kind of outreach work, stakeholder engagement work in member states to build up to civil society capacity to work on these plans, both on their development and their assessment. Just try and get civil society in all the member states more engaged in the development of these plans. For a funding decision from the Commission, so hopefully it's not bad that the Commission is here to hear how it's done.
Thanks to all speakers, and it's been a really great pleasure. Thanks a lot. Thanks for a very lively debate. For many questions, good questions, though it was really fun and I think very interesting to have you in the room. My impression is a lot is ongoing. There is a lot kind of action ongoing on the regional cities level. We are at the start of having structures as well to connect the different levels. I think there's an open question whether this is sufficient or do we need more. And also, I think in terms of the new governance regulation, what kind of opportunities do we found with this governance regulation to basically get a better structured approach and kind of a more transparent communication and basically level of ambition and sophistication in Europe. I think all levels are important. We got a very good sense of that. We think here with this project and with the experience we have that a major step and very important step in Europe actually is to increase the bottom-up activities, but at the same time for Europe to lead on the ambition side and to lead on where we need to be in the long-term perspective. And this is obviously the roadmap 2050 the European Commission has to deliver. Everybody for taking the time being here in person and online, which is always the harder job actually. So thanks a lot, and for any questions, please contact us or you find material as you want to on our website. Have a nice day. Bye.
If you have a minute, please give us the evaluation.
Anyway, so you know, this platform is innovation hub, and I know you're part of the